My name is Rachel Evans. I was 11 when my mother passed away after a short but vicious fight with melanoma. One day, she had a headache. 82 days later, I stood at her gravesite in a black dress with the tag still on. Exactly 1 year after she died, my father, Mark Evans, brought someone new home. Her name was Vanessa. She was blonde, stylish, and worked in public relations at his investment firm. The type of woman who wore high heels to outdoor barbecues and called everyone darling even if she didn't know their name. "She makes me feel alive again," Dad said. "I need you to try, Rachel." So I tried. I helped her move in, carried boxes of designer shoes into the closet where Mom's gardening boots used to be. I smiled when she painted over the family photo wall with some abstract mural to open up the space. I even pretended to like the meditation patio she installed where Mom used to grow tomatoes. Vanessa was charming. She threw elegant dinner parties, wore silk robes on Sunday mornings, and brought my father back to life, just not the version I had loved. At first, I thought I was just grieving, but grief doesn't erase who someone was. Vanessa was kind in public but cold when no one was looking. She never called me by a nickname, never asked about my friends or dreams. And worst of all, she never mentioned my mother. Not once. Still, I played the part. For 3 years, I was the perfect daughter, straight A student, quiet, polite, smiled when her friends complimented my dress and told me how lucky I was to have someone like Vanessa in my life. I smiled, but I never stopped paying attention. Because even then, something didn't sit right with me, not just the speed of their relationship or the way she fit into our lives too easily. It was something deeper. I couldn't name it yet, but I knew. Vanessa wasn't here to be a mother. She was here for something else. Vanessa loved being seen as the perfect stepmother. She bought me designer clothes, organized spa days I never asked for, and insisted on introducing me as our daughter at every networking dinner she dragged me to. But beneath all her polished smiles was a subtle distance, a coldness that grew more obvious the older I got. My dad didn't see it. He was too enamored by her glow, her success, and the way she always seemed to know the right thing to say in a room full of potential clients. "She's good for us," he told me once. "Can't you see that?" Maybe she was good for him, but she never once tucked me in when I had a nightmare. Never remembered how I liked my coffee when I finally started drinking it. And when I got my first period at 13, I learned what to do from Google. The moment I realized just how invisible I was came during my sophomore year of high school. I had auditioned for the school play on a whim, not expecting much, but to my surprise, I got the lead. For the first time since my mom died, I felt something spark inside me, a real passion, a reason to get out of bed. Opening night fell on the same evening as Vanessa's charity gala. She didn't even pretend to consider both. "Obviously, you'll need to skip the performance," she said, barely looking up from her phone. "The Richardsons are bringing their son. He's at Princeton. These are important connections, Rachel." My father opened his mouth to speak but stopped when she placed a hand gently on his arm. "It's just a high school play," he said. "There will be others." That night, I went up to my room and pulled out the small antique jewelry box my mother had left me. I hadn't opened it since the funeral. Inside were a few precious things: her wedding ring, a lock of my baby hair, and a small journal. I'd always been afraid to read it, worried it would make the loss feel even more permanent. But this time, I needed something real, something true, so I opened it. And everything began to change. The journal was filled with my mother's handwriting, elegant, steady, full of love. Most of the entries were tender memories, little notes of encouragement, hopes for my future. But the last entry, dated 2 weeks before she died, was different. "If you're reading this, Rachel," it began, "then I didn't get the time I hoped for. You need to know about the safe deposit box. The key is taped inside this cover. What you find there will change everything. I'm so sorry." I sat frozen for a long time before peeling back the journal's back cover. Taped inside was a small silver key with the name of a bank etched into its side. The next morning, I skipped school for the first time in my life. I went to First Continental Bank, where my mother's family had held accounts for generations. The branch manager recognized my name instantly. "She said you'd come one day," he told me quietly as he led me to the vault. Inside the box was a neatly organized collection: a USB drive, several manila folders, and a letter addressed to me in her handwriting. "My dearest Rachel," it began. "By now, Vanessa has likely become a permanent part of your life. I wish I could protect you from her, from your father, but I'm afraid this letter is the only shield I have left to give." I read it twice. My hands trembled as I turned the pages. she had known. 6 months before her diagnosis, Mom had discovered that Dad was having an affair with Vanessa. She had hired a private investigator who documented everything: hotel receipts, text messages, photos of them together during times when he told us he was working, later traveling alone. The folders contained all the evidence: pictures of Dad and Vanessa entering hotels in 3 different cities, screenshots of texts: she's taking Rachel to her grandma's this weekend. Come over. Or worse, sometimes I wish she'd just disappear. That one was from Dad, 4 months before Mom got sick. And there were credit card statements, 2 expensive dinners, jewelry that never reached my mother's dresser, a lease for an apartment downtown that she never knew existed. And then came the part that made my stomach twist: financial records. Evidence that Dad and Vanessa had been transferring money from my mother's family trust, money meant for me, into offshore accounts. They had planned everything, patiently, carefully, and they thought no one would ever find out. That afternoon, I sat in the bank's private room for hours, surrounded by my mother's final truth. When I finally walked out, something inside me had shifted. The grief I had carried like a second skin solidified into something sharper, something focused. But I didn't go home and scream. I didn't confront anyone. Instead, I made a decision that surprised even me. I became perfect. At dinner, I smiled and laughed. I asked Vanessa about her event planning, complimented her dress, played the role she wanted. I joined the extracurriculars she suggested, made the honor roll, and let her brag about me to her wine club friends. But every night I worked. I turned my bedroom into a command center. I cataloged every document from the safe deposit box. I built spreadsheets, researched shell corporations, learned the basics of asset tracing. I bought a small safe and bolted it behind my bookshelf, locking away digital and printed copies of every piece of evidence. I listened at dinner when Dad mentioned clients and investments. I took mental notes, then dug into the companies he referenced. Many of them were real, others were smoke and mirrors, just like Vanessa. I began recording conversations. I took photos of documents left on Dad's desk. I started keeping a journal of my own, one Mom would have been proud of. 6 months later, I opened the envelope my mother had left inside the box. It contained 3 business cards, a forensic accountant, a financial crime attorney, and a retired judge named Gerald Whitmore, my mother's father's closest friend. I called them one by one. Each agreed to meet. I told my dad I was going to debate practice. Instead, I sat in a warm wood-paneled study, shaking as I placed the files on the table. The judge listened quietly. The lawyer swore under her breath. The accountant closed his eyes for a moment and exhaled slowly. When they were done reviewing the documents, Judge Whitmore looked at me. "Your mother said you might come to us one day," he said softly. "So, what do you want to do, Rachel?" I didn't hesitate. "I want to learn everything: how to run the company, how to bring them down, how to take back what's mine." He nodded, unsurprised. "She said you'd say that?" For the next 18 months, I lived 2 lives. At home and in school, I was everything Vanessa and my father could have hoped for. I earned early admission to Yale, volunteered at events Vanessa coordinated, and wore every tailored dress she picked out for me. They praised me, showed me off, and trusted that I had become theirs. But 3 nights a week, I trained in secret. The forensic accountant taught me how to follow money across borders, how to detect fraud hidden inside routine transactions. The attorney walked me through corporate law, trust structures, and how to leverage legal language to dismantle an empire. Judge Whitmore introduced me to people who had respected my mother, powerful people in banking and regulatory circles. I was 16 and still growing, but I had already seen more truth than most adults dared to face. By the time I graduated high school at 16, I was ready. I told Dad I wanted a small celebration. He and Vanessa hosted a garden party, complete with photographers and a catered brunch. "Our brilliant girl," Vanessa said, clinking glasses with her friends. "She's going to be a star at Yale." The real celebration was still to come. A week later, Vanessa announced she wanted to make her role official. "I want to adopt you, Rachel," she said, her voice syrupy and gentle. "You're my daughter in every way that matters. Let's put it in writing." She thought it would guarantee her position, especially if something ever happened to Dad. She was securing her future, but I already had plans for mine. "I'd love that," I said, smiling. "I even have a Mother's Day gift for you, something special." Her eyes lit up. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to, for the announcement." I handed her a neatly wrapped box with a silver ribbon. She started to set it aside. Please open it now, I said. It's personal. Inside was a custom-bound book, soft leather cover, gold embossed title, A Daughter's Gratitude. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it, expecting photos or letters. But the first page was a picture of my mother, smiling in her garden. "What is this?" she asked, voice tightening. "Keep going," I said. Page by page, she read through the timeline of fair evidence, financial transfers, even medical suspicions. My annotations guided her through every section, my handwriting elegant and cold. Her face paled, then flushed. Sweat beaded along her forehead. She looked up, barely breathing. "This is absurd." I smiled. Chapter 3 has the offshore accounts and a full summary of the charges already drafted. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. we meet Judge Whitmore. I suggest you show up. It's better than prison. Vanessa knocked over her mimosa as she stood, trembling. "Careful," I whispered. "Your guests are arriving. You wouldn't want them to see what a fraud looks like before brunch." While Vanessa tried to regain her composure for the guests gathering outside, I left her dressing room and placed an identical gift box in my father's office. Inside was a copy of the same book with extra documents detailing his direct role in the financial schemes. He arrived late from his golf game, casual and smiling, loosening his tie as he walked through the front door. "How was the party?" he asked, setting down his keys. "You should open your gift," I said, handing him the box. He gave me a puzzled look but did as I asked. He flipped open the book and started scanning the pages. His expression changed almost immediately, confusion, then disbelief, then silence. He kept turning the pages. Unlike Vanessa, he didn't scream or protest. His training as a lawyer held him together, even as the color drained from his face. "Where did you get this?" he asked finally, his voice low. "From Mom," I said. "She left it all for me, along with instructions." A flicker of something passed through his expression: grief, regret, or just fear. I couldn't tell anymore. "Rachel, whatever you think you know." "I have every document in triplicate," I interrupted, "stored in secure places, including the toxicology reports, including the offshore accounts, including your text messages." His jaw clenched. "You can't prove anything about your mother's illness." "No," I said, "not yet. But the evidence is enough to warrant an investigation. And if I don't show up at Judge Whitmore's office tomorrow, it all goes to the FBI." He closed the book carefully, like it was a bomb. "What do you want?" I took a breath, steady and rehearsed. "You resign. Publicly, you transfer full control of the company back to the trust in my name. So you and Vanessa both step down, but remain as consultants under my oversight, and all diverted funds are returned." His eyes narrowed. "Or what?" "Or the documents go to every regulatory body that ever licensed you." Upstairs, I found Vanessa in the guest room, sitting in stunned silence with a suitcase half-packed on the bed. I didn't need to say anything, she knew. That night, I barely slept. I listened to them argue behind closed doors, voices rising and falling. Around 3 a.m., I heard the sound of a car engine. When I came downstairs at sunrise, my father sat alone at the kitchen island, still in yesterday's clothes. "Vanessa's gone," he said flatly. "Took her car, left her phone." "I expected as much," I replied. He looked up at me, eyes red-rimmed. "You look like her," he said quietly. "Your mother. When she was ready for a fight." I didn't reply. "Let's go," I said instead. "The judge doesn't like to be kept waiting." The meeting with Judge Whitmore was efficient, emotionless, and devastating, at least for my father. He sat across from me, in the judge's study, stripped of his usual calm. One by one, he signed every document: resignation letter, transfer of voting rights, control of the trust, legal acknowledgement of financial misconduct. The judge walked him through each item slowly, with the tone of someone who had once cared about him, but no longer trusted a single word he said. "You understand," the judge said, "that any deviation from these terms will result in immediate submission of all evidence to the authorities." Dad nodded, barely meeting anyone's eyes. Then came the final clause: he could not contact me directly until I turned 18. All communication would go through the trustees. "What?" he blurted, a flicker of resistance sparking back to life. "She's my daughter." I looked him dead in the eye. "Sign it, or I release the medical evidence." His hand trembled as he picked up the pen. The same mont blanc my mother had used to sign her first company acquisition, now in his grip as he ceded everything. After it was done, Judge Whitmore quietly informed him that a car was waiting to take him to a hotel. He could return next week under supervision to collect his belongings. Dad stood, paused, and turned toward me. "Your mother would be proud," he said. I couldn't tell if it was a compliment or an accusation. "I know," I replied. 2 months later, I sat at the head of a conference table in what used to be his office. The press release called it a planned transition, a celebration of young leadership, honoring my mother's legacy. My father stayed on in name only, bound by quarterly reviews and stripped of any decision-making power. Vanessa, picked up by authorities in Miami trying to access one of the flagged offshore accounts, returned under house arrest and restricted work terms. The prenup she'd once laughed off left her with almost nothing. It wasn't revenge, not really. It was restoration, a return to truth, a line drawn in permanent ink. And I had signed it with her pen. 6 months after I took control, I sold the house. It was never mine, not really. Not after they painted over my mother's photos, paved her garden, and filled it with curated perfection. I moved into a modest apartment downtown, walking distance from the office, close enough to feel grounded. The company thrived under new leadership. We recovered most of the stolen assets, rebuilt damaged relationships, and restored the name my mother had spent her life protecting. And still, one piece remained unsolved: the question of what really happened to her. I hired specialists to re-examine the preserved tissue samples to test the items she used in her final weeks. The results were always the same: suspicious, inconsistent, inconclusive. My father swore he never touched her food, never altered her medication. "I wanted her gone," he once admitted, "but I didn't kill her." I don't know if I believe him. Maybe I never will. But last week I went to her grave. I left wildflowers just like she loved. "I did what you asked," I whispered. "It's safe now." And from a distance, Vanessa watched me. She didn't come close. She just nodded and walked away. Every Mother's Day since that first one, I've sent Vanessa the same gift. Just a single photograph. It's always the same image: my mother, smiling in her garden, sunlight in her hair, hands stained from the soil she loved. Tucked behind the photo is a simple note that reads, "Thinking of you today." She's never responded, but I know she receives them, and I know she understands. There are wounds that time can't erase. There are betrayals so profound that no amount of money or punishment could ever balance them. But what I learned from my mother wasn't how to hold on to pain, it was how to turn it into purpose. She didn't raise me to be angry. She raised me to be unbreakable. What they took from her I reclaimed, quietly, relentlessly, without becoming them. Because justice, real justice, doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it arrives like a whisper, a turned page, a signed document, a life rebuilt. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that the truth always has a way of surfacing, then let it be a reminder. You are stronger than the lies told about you. And when the moment comes, you'll know exactly how to rise. Like, share, or leave a comment if this story spoke to something in you. Someone else might need to hear it today.